Well, good morning, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Anthony D'Ambrosio. I'm actually Dr. Lay's student, and I want to just take a moment out to say thank you for allowing me to come into your class and do this presentation. Now, before I get started today, I just want to tell you a little bit story about myself. Usually when I come home from work, I typically have a little routine that I like to do. I like to do the same thing. Usually when I come home from work, I usually find my favorite chair, my recliner, I plop myself in it, I put my feet up, I turn on the remote, and I'm sitting there watching The Big Bang Theory. That's pretty much how I spend my night after work. Now, when I'm watching a TV show like that, sometimes I can't help but feel amazed at just how much goes into a TV show. And not a lot of people realize what exactly goes into the making of a television show or the making of a film. And I can tell you, as the vice president of the Television and Film Club here on campus, I can tell you that there's really a lot that goes into it. So what I'm going to be going over today, in essence, is I'm going to be going over the three main phases of production and what it takes to have a show and take it right from the beginning all the way up to its big debut on TV or on the silver screen. So the first step that we're going to go over, step number one, and I'm going to write on the board a little bit if that's okay with you, ma'am. We're all set with that. So the first step that we're going to go over is a little something called pre-production. Now, pre-production is when you have a show, you got to start off somewhere, right? And this is where you start. And the first thing you got to work on is your idea. You got to have an idea for your show. You got to have an idea for your film and what it is that you're going to be shooting, what it is, the story that you're going to be telling. So this is typically the stage where you have the writer, you have the director, they're writing out their script. They're portraying the story on paper. And they're also going to be working on something that's called storyboarding. Now, for those of you who don't know what storyboarding looks like, it's a little something like this. And typically what they'll do is they'll have a board just like this, typically a little bit bigger. Or they'll do it on a sheet of paper, and in these little squares, it's usually blank, and then what they'll do is they'll draw out the actual scene. So for example, let's say I have this little character here, and in the distance he sees a little bird flying. And I apologize for my nasty drawing, speculation there, but that in essence is what it would look like. So we have the script that portrays the story in writing. But the storyboard is where you actually portray it in a visual before you actually start filming. And this is also where we do what's also called scouting, which is where when you're filming, if you're not in a studio or in an indoor controlled setting, you're actually outdoors in a different location. So there's scouters that find those locations and acquire those places for us so that way we can go and film. So that, in essence, is the first stage. That's pre-production. And then the second stage that I'm going to go over, number two, is probably the one that everybody associates with the most, which is production itself. Now, production is the fun part. The fun part, what everybody thinks about. It's when you have the director there. It's when you have the cameraman. You have the actors. Everybody says action, and then the scene comes to life. And it's really a lot of fun, but a lot of people sometimes don't realize what goes on behind the scenes. If you ever watch it behind the scenes, the making of whatever your favorite film is, there's always costume designers, there's always makeup artists, there's the actors themselves that have to get ready, there's camera people, is a separate team specifically for just audio to capture the sound, to capture the voice of the actors. You've got the producer there making sure everything's running smoothly as possible. You've got the director there. There's a lot that really goes into it, but ultimately, in my personal opinion, it's probably the most fun. That's the main essence of filming right there. So then what we do is we go to our third and final step, which is the post-production. Now, the post-production is what everybody calls editing. There we go. Post-production is, in essence, the editing. That's where you take all the raw footage that has been captured and all the sound that has been captured. And that's where you work on a computer and you typically put it together. And if you ever go down to the A-Tech basement here on campus and you actually go to the television studio and you go to the computer labs there, you typically see some very state-of-the-art equipment there. And that's where they take the footage and they cut it down to the main portion of it, the part that really portrays the story, and they put these different film clips together. And and they put the sound effects together. And that's really the main portion of post-production. That's also where you add in the background music. A lot of people don't think about that, but think of your favorite movie for a second. Just take a minute, think about that in your mind for a minute. Think of the background music for a second. You probably don't realize it, but background music is something that's been used all throughout television, all throughout film, and what it does really is it sets the mood, it sets the tone for whatever story you're trying to portray. So now we've got the script, we've got the storyboarding, we've done the filming, we've put the film together, now we get to the fun part. Now we actually get to present it. Rather it's the season premiere, the season finale, or the big debut on the silver screen, there is such a level of satisfaction when you're presenting your project, and I can tell you from experience, there's just truly nothing like it. But that, in essence, to sum everything up, is the three main phases of creating a television show, of creating a film. Your pre-production, your production, your post-production. Now, I know I'm going through this a little quickly today, but I want you to just take a moment and stop and think about it. How many people are on average in a class? Maybe about 25 people, somewhere in there, 25, 30. Remember that that is just enough people to get through one of these three phases. In reality, to complete a show, to complete a film, it usually takes 3 times the size or 4 times the size of that. And that's just for a small budget and production. It's really interesting when you get into it, but that in essence, to sum everything up, is your main phases of production. That in a nutshell is how we as filmmakers, how we as writers, how we put this story together, and we can share it with you guys as the public. I want to thank you for your time today. I hope you learned a little something about it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards. I thank you so much for your time, and I thank you so much for your patience. I'm going to hand it back off now. And without further ado, I'd like to thank you once again, and have a nice day.